Are you with Umbrella?
Yeah. We came all the way out here to save you civilians. But the mission went bad the minute we landed.
Save us? It's Umbrella's fault that all of this happened in the first place.
Hey, easy, Chica. I'm just a hired gun. Grill me later. Come on!
I'll bet it's not so hard inside.
Unfortunately, as of recording these statements, I have not been able to put in the time necessary to finish Resident Evil 3, which this is clearly a ripoff of. I don't know why they skipped over Resident Evil 2 and went straight to 3, but I guess it makes a lot more sense, since they couldn't wedge in Leon and Claire's character arc to something that was trying to tell the story of Jill and Chris. So I guess it makes sense that way. It just seems kind of odd that they overlooked one of the best games of the series. But whatever, it's just another creative choice that marks the unique qualities that Umbrella Chronicles can bring to a fan's video game library. And today we get to enjoy one of the, I suppose, iconic monsters of Resident Evil 3, and that is the Gravedigger, which is just a giant tunnel worm. Like, in a lot of these Resident Evil games, one of the big positives they usually get out of these is that they have good monster design, but even for just being a Resident Evil monster that's just a regular animal just injected with the T-virus again for no reason, the Gravedigger is a terrible looking monster, and I don't mean terrifying, I mean just terrible. Like, it's just a giant worm, and that's not actually scary, especially since the whole butthole full of teeth thing doesn't actually get into the boss fight and actually do things. Gravedigger's main method of attack is just to throw rocks into the air and hope that they land on Jill and Mexican guy. And it brings up something that came up in a previous boss fight of this game, and one thing that just makes this entire boss fight that little more bullshit than it really should be is that you need to be shooting all of these rocks all of the time and hitting every single frickin' one before they drop on your heads. There's like 5 projectiles every time it happens, and you don't exactly get a lot of time to deal with every single one of them, and being as accurate as you need to be to avoid all the damage and then, you know, not just lose by attrition is just kind of unfair. Other than that, the Gravedigger doesn't really have a lot more tricks up its sleeve other than, I think, flailing melee attacks, which is just terrible. The Gravedigger doesn't really have a stun animation, so if you see the attack coming, you really can't do anything about it, and unfortunately the Gravedigger does fall into that trap of including a lot of attrition-based losses, just because it has so much health, hides for significant parts of the boss fight, and you can really only damage it on its terms, which is just a red flag for a terrible boss design. And unfortunately, that's the Gravedigger in a nutshell gameplay-wise, is that it just takes forever. You have to fight it on its own terms, which is bullshit. It's vulnerable only when it wants to. It has a ton of health, and it just takes forever. Like, you have to wait through the attack patterns to get your chance to damage it. Your camera's in the sky for like 1/3 of the boss fight, and it's just a kind of big old mess that they got going on here. I'm sure that the Gravedigger in other parts of Resident Evil 3 is terrifying and, you know, in a game that really gave a shit about developing its horror standard. But here, it's just really annoying, and unfortunately, in a scary video game, this tends to be the trap that most of them fall into, is when they try to be actually scary and get into the gameplay mechanics to make scares happen, and it all more or less just turns into annoying the player instead of scaring them. Yeah, running around town with 0 resources is scary, but when I need to run into a boss fight with nothing that I've got, after a couple of attempts, I'm just gonna get pissed off at the person who developed the game. Other than that, I don't imagine that Gravedigger has a great backstory behind him because, like I said, he's just a giant worm. There's nothing more to say about him. They didn't even give him a cool design to get away from just being a giant worm. That's all it is a giant worm. Something completely boringly made and annoyingly designed to take as long as possible to just drain your health very slowly and to kill you with your own lack of patience. And I'm pretty sure that none of us have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that that was a bad idea.